The aliens laughed. They thought humanity had gone too far, again. But they didn't understand yet. They didn't know what overkill really meant. The Galactic Council chamber echoed with murmurs of disapproval. The species gathered, long-lived, intelligent beings who had ruled the stars for millennia, shook their heads in unison. Humans were a young species, too reckless, too unpredictable. They didn't follow the logic of war. Commander Carter, a tall, thin alien with deep-set eyes sneered, "We strongly advise against any excessive measures." Captain Luke Carter sat at the center of the transmission hub aboard Outpost 47, a small but crucial station at the very edge of human space. He didn't have the luxury of sitting in a grand chamber, surrounded by diplomats. He was on the front lines. And the enemy was coming. Excessive? Carter's voice was calm, but his grip on the console was tight. "Ambassador, the Vorthans don't take prisoners. They don't negotiate. They erase civilizations. If we hold back, we die." The Vorthan Empire had conquered dozens of planets, each one falling in days. Their technology was superior, their numbers overwhelming. And now, they were here. A fleet of 300 warships was bearing down on Outpost 47. Humanity had 12 ships. The Council's response was predictable. Surrender. The logical choice is to preserve lives. Carter exhaled slowly. They always think we'll back down. They always think we'll play by the rules. A junior officer's voice crackled through his earpiece. "Captain, enemy fleet approaching. Estimated contact in 8 minutes." Carter stood, his decision already made. "Council, I appreciate your input. But we're not surrendering." Gasps echoed from the diplomats. A heavy pause followed before the ambassador scoffed. "You humans. Always overkill. You're about to make a foolish, unnecessary stand. This will not end well." Carter turned off the transmission. He was done listening. The bridge of his ship, ironclad, was quiet except for the soft hum of the engines. The crew knew the odds. No one spoke of survival. They all knew what had to be done. Across the view screen, the Vorthan fleet emerged from hyperspace, towering black behemoths, each one bristling with enough firepower to reduce the entire system to dust. A transmission came through, the deep, guttural voice of the Vorthan commander filling the bridge. "Humans. You have one chance. Surrender, and your deaths will be quick." Carter smiled. "Oh, we don't do quick." He turned to his weapons officer. "Execute Protocol Omega." The officer hesitated. "Sir, are we sure?" Carter's voice was steady. "They think we're excessive. Let's show them what overkill really looks like." Outside, the human ships powered up. But not just weapons. Something else. Something the galaxy had never seen before. The first shot fired, and the impossible began. "They think we're excessive. Let's show them what overkill really looks like." Carter's voice was calm, but beneath the steady tone was a promise, one that sent a chill through the bridge crew. The ironclad's main tactical screen flickered to life, showing the vast enemy fleet bearing down on them. 300 warships. Their hulls gleamed black against the backdrop of space, massive and unstoppable. They were arranged in perfect formation, an armada of conquest that had erased entire species before. And humanity had 12 ships. 12 against 300. The logical response was retreat. The Galactic Council had already pleaded for them to surrender. But logic had never won wars. Carter pressed his comm link. "All ships, execute Protocol Omega. Now." The enemy's overconfidence. Aboard the Vorthan command ship, Supreme Warlord Ziltor watched the human ships on his display. His mandibles clicked together in amusement. Foolish creatures. The Galactic Council had warned them, warned the entire galaxy, that humans fought like no other species. That they didn't just defend themselves, they overcompensated. They escalated. And yet, every civilization that had come before them thought the same thing: they're just humans. Weak. Primitive. Unruly. Ziltor sneered. We begin in 1 minute. I want every ship to fire at maximum power. We will end this in seconds. His officers nodded. Their fleet had reduced entire planetary defenses in minutes. This would be no different. But then something changed. The first strike, humanity's secret weapon. On the ironclad, the tactical officer's voice was tense. Sir, Omega Protocol is online. Are you sure about this? Carter nodded. Fire. At once, the human fleet fired. But it wasn't a normal attack. The first 3 projectiles launched from the ironclad weren't missiles, lasers, or any standard weapon. They were unpowered metal rods, pure tungsten, fired at an impossible speed. From a distance, the attack looked laughable. No explosives, no energy output. Just 3 silent streaks of metal hurtling toward the enemy. Ziltor watched from his command deck. He laughed. Are they throwing rocks at us? Then the first projectile struck. A single Vorthan warship, 3 kilometers long, shielded by energy barriers that had never been breached, simply disappeared. No explosion. No fireball. Just gone. The kinetic impact was so overwhelming that the ship folded inward on itself, crushed by the sheer force of physics. The second rod struck another ship, turning its entire starboard side into vapor. The third rod sent shockwaves rippling through space, tearing apart everything nearby. Ziltor stopped laughing. What is that? His officers were silent. This wasn't a new type of energy weapon. This wasn't something they could shield against. It was raw force. Humanity had turned the simplest element of war, momentum, into something unstoppable. The battle becomes a slaughter. Impact confirmed, Carter's tactical officer reported. Multiple enemy ships destroyed. They didn't even have time to react. Carter watched the Vorthan fleet reorganizing. They were rattled. Good. Reload. Fire again. More tungsten rods launched. This time, the enemy tried to move. They activated their shields, their countermeasures. It didn't matter. Their shields were built to absorb energy blasts. Not a physical object moving at 100 kilometers per second. The second barrage hit harder. 5 more Vorthan warships collapsed inward, reduced to debris. Another one was struck so violently it split in half, the vacuum of space tearing it apart. The human fleet, outnumbered 25-1, wasn't just surviving. They were winning. The Vorthans panic. On the Vorthan command ship, chaos erupted. Ziltor's officers shouted, scrambling for solutions. They had never seen this before. Commander, their weapons, our shields don't work. The humans, they're not fighting fair. Ziltor slammed his fist onto his throne. Of course they're not fighting fair. They're fighting to win. For the first time in centuries, the Vorthans, a species that prided itself on domination, felt something new. Fear. Humanity's final warning. Carter opened a fleet-wide broadcast. His voice carried across all human and enemy frequencies. This is Captain Luke Carter of the United Earth Fleet. You came here expecting an easy fight. You thought we would surrender. You thought we would beg. He let the silence hang before continuing. You were wrong. The remaining Vorthan ships hesitated. Some even began to retreat. Ziltor's rage boiled. No. We do not retreat. I will not be humiliated by these humans. But his officers weren't listening. They were watching the latest sensor data. More human weapons were coming. Only this time, it wasn't just tungsten rods. The real overkill begins. Ziltor's eyes widened as something massive emerged from behind the human fleet. It wasn't a ship. It was a station. A structure the size of a moon. It had no engines, no defenses, nothing that looked like a conventional weapon. But then, it activated. And the entire battlefield changed. The stars flickered. The very fabric of space warped. Ziltor didn't understand what he was seeing, until his sensors screamed an alert. The humans had just fired a weapon that bent gravity itself. A gravitational pulse surged outward. The remaining Vorthan ships, still hundreds of kilometers away, suddenly found themselves being pulled toward something. It wasn't a black hole. It wasn't a wormhole. It was something worse. The laws of physics had just changed. Ziltor's command ship began drifting off course. His crew screamed. "Sir! We're being pulled in." He slammed his fist against the console. What have they done? The galaxy watches in horror. Across the stars, the Galactic Council watched the battle unfold. They had mocked humanity for their overkill tactics. Now they understood. The Vorthan fleet, once invincible, was in full retreat. Not because they were outgunned. Not because they were outmaneuvered. But because they had underestimated humans. Carter's voice came through the Council's broadcast. "You wanted us to surrender. You wanted us to play fair. But we don't fight wars the way you do." He paused, then delivered the final message. "The next time you come for us, know this. We don't do just enough. We do whatever it takes." His crew held their breath. The Council watched in stunned silence. And the Vorthan fleet? They ran. Because now, they knew. This wasn't overkill. This was just the beginning. This wasn't overkill. This was just the beginning. The Vorthan Empire, once the most powerful civilization in the galaxy, now trembled in fear at the sheer force humanity had unleashed. For the first time in centuries, the Vorthans felt a chill not from the cold of space, but from the horrifying realization that humanity wasn't just another species to conquer. They were something different, something terrifying. "We've underestimated them," General Ziltor muttered, his voice shaking with a rare unease. "I told you to crush them. Instead, we've unleashed a nightmare." Aboard the Vorthan command ship, the atmosphere was tense. The once confident alien commanders, who had ruled over dozens of star systems, were now scrambling to comprehend what had just happened. They had arrived expecting an easy victory. Instead, they were the ones who had been humiliated. Their ships had been destroyed, their advanced technology rendered useless. The gravitational weapon humanity had unleashed had turned the tide of battle, sending the surviving Vorthan ships into retreat. It wasn't the weapon itself that terrified them, it was the humans' willingness to use it. The Vorthans were conquerors. They were trained to destroy, to annihilate. But this was different. They had never met an enemy willing to fight beyond the boundaries of logic and reason. Humanity didn't care about playing by the rules. They cared only about survival. Humanity's resilience, the unlikely victory. Aboard the ironclad, Carter stared at the debris field left behind by the Vorthan retreat. His ships, though battered, stood proud in the midst of the destruction. Despite being outnumbered, humanity had pulled off the impossible. But Carter knew the war was far from over. The Vorthans weren't known for backing down easily, and the Galactic Council would undoubtedly try to rein them in. "Captain, we're receiving a message from the Galactic Council," reported Lieutenant Vera, his communications officer. Carter's eyes narrowed. He had no time for politics. But this was important. The holographic projection of the Council's ambassador flickered into view. The alien's expression was unreadable, but Carter could see the underlying tension. "Captain Carter, this was an unexpected turn of events," the ambassador began, his voice measured. "The Vorthan Empire has been severely damaged. But you've gone too far. The destruction you've caused threatens the very balance of power in the galaxy." Carter felt his jaw tighten. He had expected this. He had always known the Council wouldn't approve of his tactics. "I did what had to be done," he replied coolly. "The Vorthans were going to wipe us out. There was no choice." "And yet, you've broken every treaty we've ever made," the ambassador countered. "You've escalated the war to a point no one can control." "You want control?" Carter's voice was low, his gaze unwavering. "The Vorthans don't understand control. They only understand fear. And now, they fear us." The ambassador shifted uncomfortably. "You've gone too far, Captain. What if the next species tries to challenge humanity? What will happen when the entire galaxy sees the threat you pose?" Carter glanced out the viewport at the stars, thinking for a moment. The weight of the ambassador's words hung heavily in the air. He could feel the pull of the Council's authority, but there was something else, something deeper. Humanity wasn't just a tool of conquest. They were survivors. The Vorthans, the Council, none of them understood that. "What if they challenge us?" Carter finally asked, turning back to the projection. "We'll survive. We always do." The enemy's realization, fear becomes the new weapon. Meanwhile, deep within the heart of the Vorthan Empire, the highest-ranking officers gathered in a dark, silent room. General Ziltor stood at the head of a holographic table, his hand resting on the map of the galaxy. The defeat had been crushing. But what frightened him the most wasn't the destruction of his fleet, it was the psychological blow. Humanity had done what no one thought possible. They had fought back when they were supposed to have been crushed. And now, the galaxy was beginning to question the Vorthan Empire's supremacy. "I've heard of this before," one of Ziltor's advisors said, his voice low with dread. "I've seen it in the ancient records, the Terran unpredictability. When humanity is cornered, they will lash out in ways no one expects." Ziltor's mandibles clicked in frustration. "I don't care about their unpredictability. I care about their strength. We underestimated them, again. They are unlike any species we've faced before. And now, we must prepare for their retaliation." There was a long silence. Then another officer spoke up. "General, we've already seen their power. Their ability to annihilate us, it's terrifying. But what's worse is their willingness to do it. They won't stop. They'll keep pushing until we break." Ziltor's eyes glowed with an unsettling intensity. "We have to break them before they break us. Humanity's strength, resilience against all odds." Back aboard the ironclad, Carter looked out at the stars once more. The fight had only just begun. What the Vorthans didn't understand was that humanity didn't just fight for survival. They fought for each other. The attack on Outpost 47 was a warning. But Carter knew the Vorthans wouldn't stop. They couldn't. They had too much pride, too much arrogance. And humanity would continue to stand in their way, no matter the cost. Carter's mind raced as he prepared for the next steps. "We've got to prepare for their next move," he muttered to himself. "They'll come back. And when they do, we'll be ready." His officer, Lieutenant Vera, stepped up beside him. "Captain, the Vorthans may be retreating now, but they'll regroup. They'll come for us with everything they've got." Carter nodded grimly. "And we'll be waiting." Humanity had faced overwhelming odds before. From the earliest days of exploration to the darkest chapters of their past, they had always risen to meet the challenge. They had always survived. But this time, it wasn't just about survival. It was about sending a message to the galaxy. Humanity wasn't just a race to be conquered. They were a force to be reckoned with. The unseen fear, the Galactic Council's dilemma. The message from humanity was clear: we won't back down. The Galactic Council, in their ivory towers, had underestimated the will of the human spirit. They had dismissed humanity as reckless, unpredictable. But now, they were forced to confront the truth. What if we are wrong? The ambassador murmured, watching the latest report of humanity's power. What if we've allowed something far worse to grow out of our control? He knew that the galaxy had been thrown into uncertainty. And in uncertainty, there was fear. We've been living in the shadow of the Vorthons for too long, one of the council members said gravely. Maybe it's time we start fearing something else. The Vorthons are retreating, but we are not out of danger. Captain Luke Carter stood on the command deck of the Ironclad, his gaze fixed on the stars outside. The victory over the Vorthons had been monumental. Humanity had made its mark, showing a power that no one had expected. But Carter knew better than anyone that the galaxy wasn't about to let humanity have a moment of peace. The Vorthon Empire might have retreated, but they were never going to let this humiliation stand. And the Galactic Council, well, their reaction to humanity's methods was only getting more tense. Despite the tactical genius behind their victory, the Council was deeply unsettled by the sheer scale of humanity's response. To them, humanity wasn't a species they could control anymore. They were now a threat. The Council's hidden agenda. In the silent, shadowy corridors of the Galactic Council, discussions were brewing that would change everything. We cannot allow them to become the new power of the galaxy, said Ambassador V'Tor, a cold, calculating leader from the Circle species. He had once advocated for peace with humanity, even after their controversial rise. But now, after what had happened at Outpost 47, he saw humanity as a dangerous unknown. The Council's strategy meetings had grown more heated with each passing day. There were those who still wanted to negotiate with humanity, believing that the galaxy could coexist peacefully with this unpredictable species. But V'Tor, and many others like him, saw humanity's resilience, their willingness to fight, and their complete disregard for traditional rules of engagement as a fundamental threat. The Vorthons will regroup. And they will retaliate, more viciously than ever. If we don't intervene now, humanity will have the galaxy at their mercy, another council member added, his voice laced with urgency. But how? One of the older members asked, his voice trembling slightly. They defeated the Vorthons. No one else has been able to do that. V'Tor's eyes narrowed. They need to be stopped before they gain any more power. We can't afford another accident. The hidden betrayal. Carter and his crew weren't prepared for what came next. The Ironclad was still in its triumphant, post-battle haze. There was a sense of accomplishment hanging in the air, the knowledge that humanity had struck a blow that no one would ever forget. But that was when the transmission came through. Captain Carter, we need to speak with you. The voice on the comm line was familiar, Lieutenant Commander Lyra, a trusted officer in Carter's fleet. She was a veteran, someone who had fought beside Carter through countless skirmishes. So when her message came through, it was with a sense of familiarity that Carter answered. What he didn't expect was the weight of the words that followed. Captain, I'm afraid I'm not just a messenger. I've received orders from the Galactic Council, orders to sabotage the Omega Protocol. Carter felt his heart skip a beat. His mind raced. What was she talking about? The Omega Protocol was their ultimate weapon. The same one that had wiped out the Vorthons with a force no one could have predicted. Why would they sabotage that? Lieutenant Commander, are you serious? Carter's voice was stern, but inside, he was torn between confusion and disbelief. Lyra's voice faltered slightly. It's not my choice, Captain. I don't want to do this. But the Council, they believe humanity has gone too far. They want to disarm the fleet, shut down our weapons, and force us into surrender. Carter felt his jaw tighten. This was no longer just a battle for survival. This was about trust and betrayal. The Galactic Council had secretly ordered the fleet to stand down. If Lyra and a few others followed through on these orders, humanity's primary weapon, the one that had saved them from the Vorthons, would be dismantled. "You've got to be kidding me," Carter muttered under his breath. He looked out at the stars, wondering just how far this conspiracy went. What happened to the Council's peaceful resolution? "It's not about peace anymore, Captain," Lyra said, her voice barely a whisper. "They're scared. The Vorthons were just the beginning. Now, they're afraid of what we'll do next." The decision. Carter couldn't afford to hesitate. If the Council succeeded in disabling their weapons, humanity would be completely vulnerable to every threat that had been lurking in the galaxy. The Vorthons would not just retreat, they would come back, and they would finish what they started. And the Council, in their misguided attempt to control humanity, had just sealed their own fate. Carter made a decision in that moment. "Lieutenant, we'll do what we've always done," he said, his voice resolute. "We fight. And we do it on our terms." Carter immediately relayed his orders to the rest of the fleet, commanding them to prepare for a defensive stand. The Omega Protocol would stay online, no matter what the Council said. They were the ones who had pushed humanity into this corner. And now, humanity would defend itself, no matter the cost. But before he could finish the transmission, another voice broke through the comms. "Captain Carter," said a cold, familiar voice. It was Ambassador Vtor. "I don't know who you think you are," Vtor sneered, "but your little war has gone far enough. You've upset the balance of power in the galaxy. You have no choice but to stand down." Carter's anger flared. "You're asking me to betray everything we stand for. You think you can control us? You're wrong." Vtor's voice grew quieter, colder. "You are not as powerful as you think, Captain. This will not end well for you. You have one chance, stand down now, and we'll let you live." Carter's mind raced. He knew what the Council was capable of. But he wasn't about to let them dictate humanity's future. The fate of the galaxy was now in the hands of a species that had been underestimated for too long. He had to act. "We won't surrender," Carter said, his voice unwavering. "And if you want a fight, you'll get one." The double cross. As the conversation ended, Carter turned to Lyra. "If you're serious about stopping the Council, you need to act now." Lyra's eyes were wide with guilt, but her resolve was clear. She could either follow the orders she had been given or stand by Carter and humanity's cause. The weight of the decision hung heavily in the air. "I'll do it," she said finally, her voice steady. "I'll stop them." But Carter knew it wasn't just Lyra. The entire fleet would have to be ready for what was coming. The Vorthons might be retreating, but there were bigger dangers ahead, and not just from them. The Council's betrayal wasn't just an obstacle, it was a new threat. Carter turned to his crew, his heart heavy with the burden of command. "Prepare for the worst. The Council may think they can control us, but they've made a mistake. We'll show them exactly what happens when you betray humanity." The first strike against the Council. The moment was upon them. The fate of humanity, of the galaxy, was about to be decided in the harshest of ways. And Captain Luke Carter was ready. With the Ironclad and the rest of the fleet at his back, they would prove to the galaxy what humanity was capable of. They would stand their ground. They would fight. And they would never surrender. "We've got one shot at this," Carter muttered under his breath as the Ironclad's tactical screen lit up with incoming data. The Galactic Council had given their orders, humanity was to stand down. Surrender. Disarm. Or face annihilation. But Carter didn't have the luxury of surrendering. Not when everything humanity had fought for was on the line. The Vorthon Empire, once humiliated by humanity's sheer will to survive, wasn't the only threat in the galaxy anymore. The true battle was now with the Council itself. Their power, their control, humanity had to break free of it before it could ever hope to be truly free. The battle for control. The Ironclad and the other human ships were in position. The fleet was not large, 12 ships against a vast, galaxy-spanning empire of countless worlds and military might. But they had one advantage that no one could deny: they had survived when everyone else would have faltered. Their spirit, their resilience, could never be measured by numbers alone. And now they were facing a betrayal from the very people who had once sought to control them. The Galactic Council, for all its claims of peace and stability, had never truly seen humanity as equals. To them, humans were unpredictable. Dangerous. A species whose strength lay in their refusal to follow orders. "Captain, we've got Council ships incoming," Lieutenant Vera reported, her voice grim. She didn't have to say it. Everyone knew, the Council wasn't just sending a few ships. They were sending a force. A demonstration of their power. "I know," Carter replied. "Prepare to engage. No retreat. No surrender." The Ironclad's engines roared to life, and the other human ships followed suit, each of them brimming with the raw power of humanity's most innovative technology. The Council's ships, sleek and polished, gleamed in the cold of space. They looked every bit the part of an intergalactic government. But that wasn't what scared Carter. What terrified him was the weight of betrayal. The Council had hidden their true intentions, manipulating humanity to serve their interests for years. And now, after all humanity had accomplished, after their victory against the Vorthons, they were being cast aside. Left to die. Left to submit. But Carter would never submit. The battle begins. The first salvo came from the Council fleet, a blistering wave of energy that lit up the dark expanse of space. Energy blasts, missiles, and laser beams, human ships shook as their shields absorbed the barrage. But they were ready. They'd seen worse. And they would survive. "Brace for impact," Carter shouted, gripping the console. The Ironclad rocked under the impact of several direct hits, but the shields held. Just barely. "Shields at 30%. Vera shouted from her station. "They're not pulling back. They're giving us everything they've got." "Return fire," Carter barked, his voice firm. "Target their command ships first. Take out their leadership." The human fleet retaliated, launching a salvo of missiles, sending a storm of firepower toward the Council ships. The first few missiles struck home, causing ripples of light as explosions lit up the black canvas of space. One of the smaller Council ships went dark, its energy signatures fading out. But there were more. And they were closing in. Humanity's resilience, the unseen force. What the Council didn't realize was that humanity had something they didn't: resolve. The Council's ships might have been larger, more powerful, and technologically superior. But humanity had something they couldn't measure: a deep, unshakable will to survive. They'd been pushed into corners before, and they'd fought their way out. It wasn't just a trait of the soldiers on the front lines, it was something that had been embedded into their very way of life. And now, Carter and his fleet were about to prove that in the most brutal way imaginable. The turning point. As the battle raged on, the Ironclad and the other ships in humanity's fleet continued to take hits, but they kept firing back, showing no sign of letting up. The enemy didn't expect this kind of fight. They thought they could break humanity with sheer force, but what they didn't understand was that humans don't break easily. "Captain," Vera's voice crackled over the intercom. "We've just received a message from the Council. They're offering terms." Carter's gaze never left the screen. "Terms? They're offering us a way out," Vera continued, her voice carrying a hint of disbelief. "Surrender your fleet, and they'll give us safe passage." Carter's eyes narrowed. Safe passage? After everything they've done? He shook his head. There's no deal. Not for us. Not for humanity. The Council had underestimated them again. They thought that with enough firepower, they could get humanity to bow. But no one was going to control them. Not anymore. Not after everything they had fought for. The final push. The battle was nearing its peak. The ironclad's shields were down to 10%, and the remaining ships in the fleet weren't far behind. Carter knew that if they didn't make their move soon, they wouldn't make it out of this. The Council was relentless. But humanity had a trump card. Something they hadn't yet deployed. The Omega Protocol, humanity's ultimate weapon, still had power left. Carter wasn't about to let the Council dictate their fate. He turned to his weapons officer. Activate Omega Protocol. Full power. Let's show them why they never should have underestimated us. The final weapon unleashed. The ironclad shuddered as the massive energy reserves were drawn. It wasn't just a weapon. It was a cataclysm, a force of nature that bent the laws of physics to its will. The target was clear, the Council's command ship. Target locked, the weapons officer announced. Firing now. The pulse shot out, a burst of pure energy that seemed to rip apart space itself. For a brief moment, there was nothing but light. Then the silence returned. The Council ship, the pride of the Galactic Council, the symbol of their control over the galaxy, was gone. Vaporized. In a single strike, humanity had done the unthinkable. The rest of the Council fleet faltered. They didn't know what to do. Their leader was gone. And humanity had just demonstrated something no one could deny: they were not to be controlled. The aftermath. The remaining Council ships hesitated, pulling back in confusion and fear. The battle wasn't over yet, but the balance of power had shifted. Humanity had delivered a blow that sent a message to the galaxy: they were not to be underestimated. They're retreating, Vera reported, her voice tinged with disbelief. The Council is pulling back. Carter didn't feel relief. Not yet. The war was far from over. There would be more battles, more challenges ahead. But for now, humanity had proved something that no one, neither the Vorthans nor the Council, had ever expected. They had proven that humanity was not a force to be ignored. It's not over yet. Captain Luke Carter stood silently on the bridge of the ironclad, his gaze fixed on the wreckage of the Council's command ship. The sheer force of the Omega Protocol had wiped it from existence in an instant. But even as the silence settled in, Carter knew the real fight was only beginning. The Council ships that had once surrounded them began to pull back, retreating with haste, as if the very sight of the destruction unleashed by humanity's weapon had left them in fear. Carter's tactical officer, Lieutenant Vera, stood at her console, watching the chaotic movements unfold on her screen. "Captain, the Council ships are retreating," Vera reported, her voice a mix of disbelief and relief. "Their leader is gone. They're withdrawing." Carter's eyes remained fixed on the shattered remains of the battle. A part of him wanted to feel victory, but all he felt was the weight of what they had just done. "We've crossed a line," he muttered, "and now, there's no turning back." The galaxy's new reality. As the ironclad and the other remaining human ships took stock of the situation, Carter understood that the destruction they had unleashed would have lasting repercussions. The Galactic Council, once the highest authority in the galaxy, would never recover from this loss. Humanity had delivered a blow to their very foundation. But while humanity's fleet had emerged victorious in this moment, Carter knew that they would not be left alone. The galaxy's powers had always looked down on humanity, treating them as lesser beings, unpredictable and reckless. Now, they would have to reckon with the fact that humans were not just another species to be overlooked. The message had been delivered, not with words, but with the undeniable force of survival. The call for unity. Back on Earth, as the news of the victory spread across the planet, the response was mixed. There were celebrations among the people, but also unease. Many wondered whether humanity's power had now gone too far. Would they be seen as a new force to be reckoned with? Or would they be feared and hunted by every galactic civilization? For the first time, Carter and his crew found themselves not just defending their survival but defending the very idea of what humanity stood for. They were no longer just a species fighting for existence, they were now a galactic power. And with that power came immense responsibility. Carter sat in the quiet of his quarters, looking at the messages flooding in from Earth. Leaders, politicians, diplomats, and citizens all had their opinions. Some were cautious, urging peace, while others called for further action, a guarantee of their safety. No matter how the galaxy viewed them now, one thing was clear: humanity could never go back to the way things were. "It's time to decide what kind of future we want," Carter said to himself, running a hand through his hair. "And it starts now." The galactic shift. Across the galaxy, the reverberations of humanity's actions were being felt. The Vorthons, once the dominant force, had retreated, regrouping after their humiliating defeat. They were not easily intimidated, and their desire for revenge would never fade. But they, too, knew the power humanity wielded. And in the shadows of their empire, whispers began. Whispers of an alliance. A new power rising in the galaxy. And they feared it. Back in the Galactic Council chambers, members huddled together in the wake of the catastrophe. Their attempts at peace with humanity had been dashed. Now, they faced a dilemma: how could they control a species that had just proven it could destroy them? "We can't go back to the way things were," Ambassador Vtor said grimly, his voice carrying a weight of understanding. "Humanity has changed the rules. We either adapt, or we face extinction." But even as the Council debated their next move, the galaxy had already begun to change. New alliances were being forged in the shadow of humanity's rise. The once unified galaxy was now splintered. Some races feared the power humanity had shown, while others saw an opportunity. The Ironclad's message had been heard across the stars: humanity was no longer a mere participant in galactic affairs. They were a force that commanded respect. Humanity's choice: peace or war. Carter had a decision to make. The battle against the Council was far from over. Yes, they had won this fight, but the galaxy was vast, and many enemies still lurked in the shadows. The Vorthons, the remaining factions of the Council, and countless other species would never forget the humiliation they had suffered. Retaliation was inevitable. "We've already made our mark," Carter told his officers as they gathered in the Ironclad's briefing room. "We've shown the galaxy what humanity is capable of. But we can't just keep fighting. We need to find a way to secure our future." Lieutenant Vera raised her hand. "We can't let them get the upper hand, Captain. The Council won't forgive us for this. We need to take the fight to them. Establish a new order." "And what happens after that?" Carter asked, his voice quiet but firm. "More wars? More bloodshed? We've already crossed the line once. Do we keep going?" Another officer, Commander Rylan, spoke up. "The galaxy won't let us just walk away. If we don't act, someone else will try to take our place. The Vorthons are just the beginning." Carter nodded slowly. The decision was not an easy one. Humanity had already proven its strength. But at what cost? Would they become the very thing they had fought against, the oppressors? Or could they pave a new path, one where power was used to protect, not to dominate? "It's not just about winning," Carter said quietly. "It's about what we stand for. We have to decide what kind of galaxy we want to build." The officers exchanged looks, each one understanding the weight of Carter's words. The future of humanity was at a crossroads. The calm before the storm. The next few days were filled with tense negotiations, both within the fleet and with Earth's leaders. Carter was contacted by diplomatic envoys, eager to find a peaceful resolution to the growing conflict. But Carter knew that peace, in the traditional sense, was an illusion. Humanity had taken its place among the stars, but it had done so by demonstrating a level of force that no one could ignore. "The galaxy will never forget what we've done," Carter said to his officers as they prepared for the next phase. "But it's up to us to decide if we will use that power to lead, or if we'll use it to destroy." The fleet continued to patrol the galaxy's borders, their ships now a symbol of humanity's newfound influence. They were no longer the underdogs. They were no longer a race to be overlooked. But as Carter stared out at the stars once more, he knew that humanity had only just begun its journey. The real test had yet to come. "We are humanity," he whispered to himself, watching the endless expanse of space. "And no one will ever forget us again. We are humanity." Captain Luke Carter whispered to himself, standing on the bridge of the ironclad, looking out at the vast expanse of stars. The weight of the past weeks hung over him, decisions that had reshaped the galaxy, battles that had pushed humanity to its limits, and choices that could define their future. He had led humanity to victory against impossible odds, but now, the real challenge lay ahead. Humanity had proven itself as an unstoppable force, but the galaxy was far from calm. Allies had become enemies, and enemies had become reluctant partners. Every corner of the galaxy seemed to pulse with the aftershocks of humanity's rise. The Galactic Council, once the governing body of the universe, had been crippled by the devastating blow humanity had dealt them. Now, the galaxy was a fractured place, no longer united under a single banner. But the question remained, what would humanity do next? Would they continue to fight, claiming their place by force? Or would they try to forge something new, a peace that would guide them to a future where their strength could be used to protect, rather than conquer? A moment of reflection. Carter's mind drifted back to the lessons of his past, the moments that had shaped him into the leader he was now. Growing up on Earth, humanity had always been at the brink, on the edge of survival in every era. Whether it was wars, natural disasters, or the struggle to colonize distant planets, humanity had always faced challenges with courage and ingenuity. But more than that, they had faced those challenges with an unbreakable spirit. His crew, the soldiers, the civilians back home, they all shared one thing: the will to survive, to persist, and to adapt. In the darkest moments, humanity had always found a way to rise above the chaos. The same drive that had propelled them through wars and alien invasions now drove them to stand at the precipice of something greater. But as he stared at the stars, Carter understood, it wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about responsibility. What had they fought for? For power? Or for something more? The choice, conquer or protect? The news from Earth had been coming in waves. Diplomatic envoys, leaders from different planets, even citizens from across the galaxy had reached out to the ironclad, eager to speak with Carter and his fleet. Some called for a continuation of the offensive, suggesting that humanity should expand its influence, while others sought an end to the war and a restoration of peace. "Captain, the Vorthans have requested a ceasefire," Lieutenant Vera reported. She looked at him, unsure of how to interpret the message. The Vorthans, the fierce empire that had once believed themselves invincible, had been humbled by humanity's power. Yet, even in their defeat, they had asked for peace. They want to negotiate terms. Negotiate? Carter echoed, his brow furrowed. They're the ones who started this war. They're the ones who invaded us. Vera nodded. Yes, but they've lost nearly half their fleet. They've seen what humanity can do. They're afraid of what comes next. Carter's hand tightened on the armrest of his chair. He was tired of the fighting, tired of the constant pressure to make decisions that could alter the course of history. He didn't want more bloodshed. He didn't want to keep fighting. But was peace even possible? Could they truly trust the Vorthons, or was this just another attempt to regroup and strike again when humanity let its guard down? A new kind of leadership. As Carter sat in his quarters, reflecting on the path ahead, he remembered a piece of advice his mentor had once given him. Real strength, Luke, isn't about how much power you can wield. It's about how much restraint you can show. How much you're willing to give up to create something better for everyone. His mentor had been right. Humanity's victory wasn't just about destroying their enemies, it was about choosing to build something out of the wreckage. Yes, they had shown their strength, through the Omega Protocol, through their resilience, through their will to survive. But now, they needed to show something more, wisdom. Humanity was no longer the underdog in the galaxy. They were the new force. But what would they do with that power? Would they use it to dominate, or would they use it to protect? The Galactic Council's shift. Back in the remains of the Galactic Council, representatives from various star systems met, trying to navigate the delicate balance of power that had been disrupted by humanity's rise. The Vorthons, beaten and humiliated, had reached out for peace, and many other factions were reconsidering their positions. "We cannot afford to let this escalate further," said one of the new council members, a representative from a neutral system. "Humanity is a force we can no longer ignore. But we must understand their intentions. If they wish to lead, they must prove they can do so without causing further destruction." Ambassador Vtor, the one who had once dismissed humanity as a mere annoyance, now found himself in a precarious position. He knew that humanity's power was no longer something to be feared, it was something to be respected. But he also understood that their next steps could determine the fate of the galaxy. "They have proven their strength," Vtor said, his voice slow and measured. "But the galaxy is not ready for a new empire. If humanity wishes to lead, they must show the galaxy that they are willing to protect, not conquer. A lasting peace." Carter stood before his crew one final time, looking out at the universe that stretched beyond them. Humanity had made their mark on the galaxy, but the road ahead was uncertain. He knew the galaxy would never be the same, and neither would humanity. The old ways were gone. The future was unwritten. "We've proven ourselves," Carter began, his voice carrying the weight of everything they had accomplished. "We've shown the galaxy that we won't back down. But now, we face a new challenge. We must decide what kind of leaders we want to be. It's not enough to just be strong. We must be wise. We must lead with responsibility. We must protect, not dominate." He paused, looking at the faces of his officers. "Humanity has always been about survival. But I believe we can be more than that. We can be the force that unites the galaxy. Not through fear. But through respect, through wisdom, and through peace." The crew nodded in understanding. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, Carter felt a glimmer of hope. Humanity could be the change the galaxy needed. The ironclad powered up its engines, preparing to leave the battlefield behind. Humanity had proven their strength, but now they were ready to take the next step. The galaxy had seen their power. But now, they would see their wisdom. The final lesson. As the ironclad moved through the stars, Carter looked out the viewport one last time. The lesson humanity had learned wasn't just about fighting. It was about choosing to rise above the violence, to create something better from the ashes of war. It's not enough to just survive, Carter thought. We must create. We must protect. And we must lead, not by force, but by example. And in that moment, humanity knew, they weren't just a force of destruction anymore. They were a force of hope. The galaxy would never forget them.